Good afternoon, everyone, and you are all warmly welcome to this webinar, Empowering Rural Ghana and Electrification Journey Web Sharing. My name is Seth Mahu. I am the Director for Renewable Energy and Green Transition. I'm happy to be having this engagement with you this afternoon. So once again, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Seth, for the intro. Just one thing, I can see kind of like not quite your whole face. So maybe if you can, adjust the camera, that'd be good. So they can all see you. There you go. Now we can all see you. Um, and yeah, thank you for starting things off. I'll just as I mentioned, we'll and do those of you who have been before, so you know how it goes. So I'll do a little bit of housekeeping to start with, and then we start with the round of introductions. So Seth and Efwa will introduce themselves, and then we start with the webinar itself. So just very quickly, I'll so you get to the good bit, which is Seth's and Efwa's interventions. So the first of all, welcome. Secondly, we hope that you ask questions, and there is actually a function for you to ask questions, which is in the toolbar below. There is a Q&A function, and then you can essentially there send your questions in writing. And you also, if you can see, there is a chat function. So we always encourage all attendees to write just who they are, what they do, and just introduce yourselves essentially. So we can have a little bit of networking as well. And this webinar is actually being recorded as well. And with the permission from Seth and Effa, we'll share the slides that we'll be showing today and the recording too. So yeah, that's all from my side really. So I'll ask then the panelists to introduce themselves. So um, maybe Seth, if you could briefly let the audience know who you are, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Carlos, once again for the opportunity. I believe you're able to see my face quite well. Yeah, my name is Seth Mahu. I am the Director for Renewable Energy and Green Transition here at the Ministry of Energy in Ghana. I'm happy to be in this webinar with the rest of you this afternoon, and I believe it's going to be very interactive and informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seth. And we're all looking forward to your presentation. And now, Efwa, if you could please briefly introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Efwa Nyamechapia, and I'm also from Ghana. I work with a Green Africa Youth Organization. Here I lead our energy and just transition work, mainly on tripling renewables, doubling efficiency, and also on the workforce building for Africa. Thank you. It's very awesome to be here in this webinar today. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So just so you know, today things are slightly different. So Seth will give his presentation, then Efwa has a few questions, and she'll be the moderator, right? So once Seth starts with his presentation, I'll switch my camera off, but I will be here though, so I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here listening to you and watching you, but it's over to both of you to carry on with the webinar. So Seth, whenever you're ready, start sharing your screen. I see that it's being shared now, and begin with your presentation. There we go. I can see it
Thank
in
you very
full
much.
screen.
Thank you very much, I hope we can have a full screen for the presentation. So yes, I work for the Ministry of Energy, and I've been in the ministry for over 1.5 decades now. As the director, I have a mandate to ensure that we promote the development of renewable energy. We also use renewable energy to address our last mile electrification efforts. I'm also leading the charge on the green energy transition for the country. So it is a daunting challenge or task, but I also see it very, important and exciting, especially at this time that there is every effort globally, regionally, to ensure that we transition from the fossil fuel dependent energy architecture to a more sustainable, environmentally friendly energy architecture in the foreseeable future. So it is really, really exciting, and I'm happy to make a brief presentation of what we have done as a country to get to where we are today. So I want us to just quickly look at the outline of my presentation, and then we'll continue from there. So I would be talking briefly about Ghana. Then I'll also give you some electrification background or history, then the status of renewable energy development in the country, the role of mini grids, our experience, and then we'll look at some lessons that we've learned, the critical factors making mini grid electrification a success in Ghana, and then I'll draw on conclusion that we can have an interactive Q&A session. So Ghana is a small country with an area mass of around 258,000 square kilometers, so it's not really big. The population of the country currently stands at 34 million people. And as we see in the trend that is emerging across the rest of the globe, the same is happening in Ghana as well. We are becoming more urbanized. And as of last year, December 2024, our population, about 56% now lives in urban areas. The rest lives in rural areas. The growth rate is 2.17%, whereas the growth rate in the urban areas is around 3.5%. I want us to look at the economics, so just a click to give us what the economic data looks for. Politically, Ghana is a democratic country. We have had successive elections without or with little issues. We've changed governments. We've moved from one political party to the other. So Ghana has become a beacon of democracy in Africa. In terms of GDP, the estimated GDP for the country is around $88 billion US, with service industry being the largest, followed by industry, and then agriculture contributing about 22% to the GDP of the country. I want us to move to the next level. In terms of electricity generation statistics, currently we have a total of 5,712 megawatts of installed capacity, out of which 27.7% is coming from hydro. Thermal is contributing about 67%, and 4.5% is coming from modern renewables, mainly in the area of solar energy. The sector is characterized by two actors. We have independent power producers whose portfolio accounts for about 41% of the total installed electricity generation capacity of the country, and the public utilities. Two main utilities, the Water River Authority and the Buipa Authority, accounting for 59% of total electricity generation capacity for the country. We have an open access transmission scheme. So what it means is that if you come in as an independent power producer, you should be able to have access to the transmission infrastructure to wheel your power to whoever will be your off-taker. There are three main power distribution companies in the country. Two are state-owned, that is the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, taking care of or distributing power to the southern belt of the country. And then we have the Northern Electricity Distribution Company that distributes power to the northern half of the country. The private distributor in Ghana is called Enclave Power Limited. They operate solely in the free zone enclave. It's an exclusive economic zone where we have a number of industries operating, and they are the entity that distribute power to all these industrial customers. I would want to just throw a bit of light on the policy and regulation space of Ghana. We have a very vibrant policy environment. Currently, we have the National Energy Policy that was approved 2 years ago, and it's going to be running up until 2030. This policy lays the foundation for the entire energy sector of the country, taken from hydrocarbons, electricity generation, renewable energy, and other forms of energy. They are all anchored on the National Energy Policy document. Then out of this policy document, we have developed a number of policies. So the Renewable Energy Act also takes its roots from the policy, and it provides the legal framework for the development of renewable energy in the country. Then most recently, we developed the Ghana National Energy Transition Framework, which is a 40-year plan outlining how Ghana intends to, accelerate the path towards a net zero by 2060. And we've looked at a number of interventions that will help us in doing so. Then we also have the Renewable Energy Master Plan, which now gives us a strategic direction as to how we can quickly bring on board renewables. So by 2030, we are looking forward to achieving certain milestones, which I'll be talking to in the next slides. Now, electrification. In 1998, the government of Ghana came out with a policy instrument to ensure that we extend electricity to the entire country over a 30-year period. That is from 1990 up to 2020. And this long-term plan has really given us the blueprint as to how Ghana's electrification journey has evolved. And in the plan, 64 out of 110 district capitals were then without access to electricity at the time. And we were of the view that by 1996, additional 41 district capitals must be connected to the grid. And from that time onwards, we had plans to enable us move in batches to be able to connect district capitals to the grid within the period of 1996 and 1998. So these were the key background information to the National Electrification Scheme as to how we're going to be moving the country. And I must say that around 1989, just a little above 25% of the population had access to electricity. And these were mainly in the regional capitals, even not all the regional capitals, but the regional capitals in the southern part of the country. Now, how do we ensure that we are able to move from 25% access to about 100% access over a 30 years period? We need to have a clear strategy, and we're looking at a number of approaches. First is the financing of the whole plan. We were looking at using grants and concessional financing to be able to accelerate the electrification process in Ghana. Secondly, we have to also undertake a comprehensive study of the entire sector and come up with a national electrification master plan that will outline how we'll be rolling out electrification over a 5 years period and the various, interventions that will help in driving that master plan. So the study was considered, and we looked at a number of areas that will help us to be able to do that. One, it's not only about extending the national lines, but also ensuring that we have generation that would meet the demand as we increase access. So dating back that period, Ghana was already looking into areas like solar, wind, biomass, hydropower to contribute to the generation mix to ensure that we are able to have generation enough to meet the demand as we extend electricity across the country. Then we were also looking at the economics of electrification. So it's not just about addressing the social needs, but how economical is the electrification going to be? So we have to now look at the boundaries and look at the economic potentials of all these boundaries, rank them, and then from there on, we started the electrification program to ensure that we are doing electrification based on social interventions and also for economic reasons. So the first phase covered the connection of all district capitals. So that was the first phase of the electrification journey. All district capitals. By the way, Ghana operates a decentralized governance system, as you find in many places in Europe and elsewhere. So the district capitals are the seat of government that ensure that governance is administered at the district level. We want to make sure that we electrify all these district capitals. And in so doing, we had as part of the strategy that as the lines traverse through villages and communities, all those villages and communities that come close to the lines must also be connected. The subsequent phases entailed the electrification of communities based mostly on the economic viability of these communities. So to ensure that no community get left out, and also to move the process very fast, when your community is within 5-kilometer radius from the lines, you are connected automatically. What about communities that are not within this radius? They would have to wait until it is their turn. And because electrification was bringing so much social and economic benefit to communities that have been electrified, unelectrified communities became so agitated, and we have to come up with the self-help electrification program, SHEP. And with this, the rationale is to ensure that we reduce the time it would have taken a particular community to be connected to electricity, number one. Number two, once the communities are able to also contribute to some extent, mainly in the form of providing their own low voltage distribution poles, we are able to extend access to them. So it will also reduce the cost on government, and it brought on board community ownership as far as electrification is concerned. And this became a flagship intervention in Ghana that really propelled us to achieve a very high electrification rate as a country, because communities now were coming together to procure their own poles and then they justified that government was compelled to extend electricity to these communities. So we had a SHEP program running, and we've run it in phases, as you see in the subsequent slides. Now, the criteria for joining the SHEP are three, or let me say more than three, but I just want to highlight a few. One, the community must be within 20 kilometers of an existing sub-distribution or sub-transmission network. So once your community is within 20 kilometers, you are qualified to come under SHEP. Number two, as I indicated, the community must be willing to procure and erect all the low voltage poles required for the network construction. And then the third is that in that community, at least 1/3 of houses must be wired. What it means is that when the network is brought to the community, you should be able to connect at least 1/3 of the houses in the community. So that's one of the some of the criteria required to qualify for a SHEP program. So since then, we have run in phases. We've done phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. We've gone to phase 6. And you can see the number of communities that we have completed as part of the electrification process. So a lot of communities benefited from the SHEP program that has been fused under the National Electrification Scheme. So it's really a success. It's a model that has accelerated electrification, reduced the burden on government, brought about community ownership, and so forth, therefore driving overall sustainability of the program in the country. Now, having looked at this background, you can now see the statistics that Ghana has really moved from a low access rate to a very high access rate. It's been incremental, but let me also say that the success of our access rate cannot only be, attributed to the self-help electrification program, but also it's equally attributable to the high level of political commitment. So regardless of which government took the reign of the country, they continued with the program. So there has been that continuity of electrification over the years, and access has increased incrementally to the point that as of last year, 2024 December, access rate in Ghana was at 89%. 89%. And you can see the numbers here across all 16 regions in the country. Ashanti region has the highest access, is the second highest access rate after regions like Greater Accra, Central, and Co. Now, in terms of overall access rate, as I've indicated, is 89%, with urban having almost 98% and rural having about 71%. We can move to the next slide. Now, with renewable energy, we have some targets that we wanted to achieve between next year and 2030. But before then, what is the situation? Currently, in terms of utility scale solar energy, we have close to about 183 megawatts of installed capacity, and we want to move this to 900 megawatts by 2030. Then distributed renewables, which is the fastest growing in the country, owing to an impressive policy environment, including net metering. We currently have 64 megawatts of installed capacity, and we want to push this to about 120 megawatts by 2030. We're looking at solar systems for off-grid communities, areas that are sparsely populated. Currently, we have approximately 7.6 megawatts of installed capacity in the form of mini grids and home systems, and want to add another 5 megawatts in the next 5 years. So the targets continue in that order. And I'm very much optimistic that we're going to be achieving more than this capacity by the end of 2030, looking at the way the economy is picking up and demand for power is growing and the interest in renewable energy is becoming so visible. So in terms of some graphics, as you can see, the total renewable energy installed capacity currently is hovering around 256. This should have been updated, but this is where I want to paint a picture. If you look at the pie, utility scale is the fastest growing, contributing over 60%, followed by distributed generation, contributing about 30%, and then the rest is coming from off-grid. So the off-grid market is shrinking owing to the high electrification rates. And as we move forward, this contribution from off-grid is likely to become even much smaller. Now, in terms of our last mile efforts, we have integrated mini grids into our electrification program. By the way, electrification in Ghana has been public sector driven. So we have mainstream mini grids into the National Electrification Program or scheme. And to make sure that we are able to do it in a cost-efficient and sustainable manner, we first started with a pilot project, which was funded by a World Bank loan. So we did 5 pilots and it was successful. We included operations and management component by allowing private sector to come in to run this. So we learned the lessons, and then now we've moved into the scaling up phase of mini grid electrification in Ghana. I will be talking to that in more details in the next slide. So the key features of our mini grid programs are that, one, they must be reliable, they must provide electricity services that can be benchmarked with the national electricity grid. We don't want customers on mini grids to complain that the quality of their service is poor. So we have some characteristics that the mini grids must meet. First, they should be able to deliver 100% system reliability. They should be available 24/7, and they must be 3-phase backbone so that productive uses of energy can be anchored on these mini grids. And they must be environmentally friendly. What it means is that we have to use renewable energies as much as possible to generate electricity and distribute to mini grid customers. In terms of policy, as you may know it, there are several business cases or models for mini grids across the globe. We have private sector models where you have private sector developing the mini grid, owning the assets, operating, collecting the tariff, etc. Then we have public sector-led mini grids depending on the state of electrification of a particular country. Then we also have total community-led business model where communities come together, they build their own mini grids, operate and manage it by themselves. Then we have a hybrid of any of the three. In the case of Ghana, we opted for the public sector policy for mini grid electrification. So what it means is that the mini grids have been mainstreamed into the national electrification scheme and aligned with policies on rural electrification. Then 2, it's a public business model. So in terms of ownership, mini grids have to be owned by state utilities. Operations and management will be done by state utilities. And we have 3 main actors in this space. We have the Volta River Authority that is responsible for the ownership, operations, and management of mini grids that are constructed on islands in the Volta Lake. By law, the Volta River Authority is the only entity that has mandate over how the Volta Lake is developed. Therefore, any activity there has to be regulated by them. And for that reason, we thought it prudent to let them own, operate, and manage the mini grids that are constructed in the water lake. Then Electricity Company of Ghana and NEDCO are responsible for the same functions depending on where mini grids are constructed within mainland. We factor the cost of connection of the mini grids into the project development cost so that when the mini grids are ready, we connect customers at zero connection fee. And with this, we've been able to achieve a very high access rate on our mini grids across the country. The tariff scheme is not different from what applies to customers on a national grid. So we use the same tariff scheme for them as well. So that is the policy angle of Ghana's mini grid program. So these are just some pictures to show you the kind of mini grids we are building in Ghana. We are building state-of-the-art mini grids. I must say that European Union has visited our mini grids and done their own assessment. They rated it as platinum plated. The World Bank has done similar thing. They plated it as gold standard. And currently the World Bank is using the standards that we have developed, the templates to promote mini grids across other regions, and so and so forth. So this is just a picture showing you how the mini grids look like. But in terms of solution, we are combining a number of solutions: solar, wind, depending on the resources in a particular location, batteries to store energies. We have genset, but only in case that you do not have the sun shining or sunrise for 1.5 days of autonomy, then you can use a genset. We have never had such situations since we started implementing mini grids in Ghana. A few more. So you can see that, as I've indicated, these mini grids are on islands, so you see the water bodies around them. And so far, more than 15,000 people have been hooked onto mini grid electrification in the country, owing to the support we've had from the Swiss government, the World Bank, and currently we have embarked on the scaling up phase of mini grids, and 33 additional ones are under construction to be completed by close of next year or early 2027, and that to be connecting over 70,000 people living in 49 island communities. We have completed feasibility studies for additional 140, which we have budgeted for this year, and next year we'll commence the procurement for these mini grids as well. A few more pictures just to give you a night view impression about how these communities look like. So the mini grids have really brought life and hope to the people. Social interventions like hospitals, schools are doing very well. Economic activities like markets in the communities are also, doing very well because now they have extended hours of service because of the presence of light, in the communities. So there's so much going on in these communities. Lessons that we have learned is that the business model a country must adopt is so critical. You must look at the peculiarity of your situation before you select a model. In Ghana, because the national electrification rate is so high, over 80%, and it's public sector driven, it will be difficult to bring in a private sector model, and that will create some distortions in terms of tariffs and other things, and that can have some political, issues, etc. So we thought the best model for us is public sector model. It doesn't mean it's the best model for everybody. You need to look at the peculiarity of your situation and then select the model that best fits your system. The policy decision to mainstream this, we are projecting that it's going to lead to more connections. And as you can see, on our mini grids, we've achieved more than 94% service connection rates, which is even higher than what we have on a national grid because of the kind of policies we put in place. the zero connection rate or the zero connection fee is something that has really accelerated the high service connection rate on mini grids. We're also using technologies like the radio frequency cards, intelligent dispensers to really improve customer service on the mini grids, time of use to ensure that we are not wasting energy, we are getting value for everything, are all some of the lessons we have learned from these mini grids. In terms of revenue collection, which is a major issue for most mini grid operators around the world, we have realized over 90% of revenue collection on our mini grids, which is above the national average of 70%. So mini grid collection rates are really, really impressive in Ghana, owing to the model that we are using. However, the fact that we are collecting a very high rate doesn't mean that the money we collect is sufficient to really, cover the operations and management costs of running mini grids, because these mini grids are on islands. Cost of serving them is so high. So there's a big operations and management viability gap, which for us to be able to plug it, we have to now pass it on through the national tariff. Because of that, we have developed the mini grid tariff methodology, and that has been mainstreamed into the
Well, it seems we're having some technical issues and we have lost Seth.
Yeah.
Seth, are you back?
I'm back.
Great.
Sorry, we had some small technical glitch. Yes. So as I was saying, the collection, to be able to address the delta on the operations and management component, we have mainstreamed the tariff into the national tariff system, and that differential is collected and given to the utilities to cover up. And with this strategy, we are very, very sure that mini grid electrification in Ghana is going to be sustainable in the long term. Can I move on to the next slide? Let me move on to the next slide. Yes. So the critical factors, market size is very important. In Ghana, we've seen in the chart above before that the off-grid market is becoming smaller, and it's because of the extension of the national grid to many communities. So it is not too big a size. Then two, the policy choices we make is very, very important. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. So you need to look at your situation and decide on which mini grid policy model will be suitable for you, whether it be private sector or a mix of private sector, public sector approach, or community-led. You need to look at all of that and decide on which approach to use. Then, of course, the integration of concepts. We think this is very, very important. We need to bring on board so many dimensions to the mini grids to make them sustainable. Gender, productive uses, and even making them ready for integration into the national grid should the grid arrive, and so forth. These are all things that have contributed to the successful deployment of mini grids and scale up in Ghana. Let me move on to the next slide. Let me look at the next slide. I think we are just about, this may be the last or one more to go. Yes, and then of course, the choice of technology, the price of renewable energy solutions are dropping. We have actually moved away from the use of lead acid batteries now to lithium iron phosphate battery deployment in mini grid, because the prices are dropping and they give you longer service, and so forth. Then of course, human and industrial capacity development is very important. In Ghana, we design our own mini grids. We only bring in private sector to come and do the construction, after which we take it over and we do the management and operations by ourselves. So every region, every country ought to look at capacity building, have the requisite human capital to be able to sustain the last mile electrification. I have focused more on mini grid because if you look at the efforts that are happening globally, especially with the M300 and also the European Union supports in electrification. There's a lot going into the mini grid space. So it is important that we really appreciate the dynamics in this space to be able to make these interventions successful. Financing arrangement is very crucial. Thanks to the World Bank and Africa Development Bank, who have now come up with an ambitious program to electrify 300 million Africans in the next 5 years. And mini grid is going to be providing a lot of the connections in that space. And we see this intervention as apt and timely to address the financing issues in the sector. But states must also make sure there is budgetary provision to drive last mile electrification in their regions. So on that note, I want to say thank you for listening to this presentation from Accra, Ghana, on the journey of our electrification. We are currently at 89%. This year we'll hit 90 or 90.5% because we've already connected about 100 communities already. Once we update the numbers, we are going to be getting there. But of course, let me also say that moving from 90 to 100 is not going to be a small issue. It's a daunting one because now your base is so big, any effort you make becomes a drop in the cup. So a lot of effort to be needed to go to climb up to 99.8% in the next 5 years. I thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Seth. That was very elaborate. Yeah, we've learned a lot about the electrification journey of Ghana, and it's really impressive the work that Ghana has put into make sure that we work towards 100% electrification in our country. Yeah, but then I'm still just really wondering about the 71% of electrification in rural areas. So this whole webinar is more centered on rural electrification, although Ghana has made remarkable strides in national electrification. There's a bit like over close to 30% of rural electrification that is needed to really close the gap in the rural areas, despite the urban electrification. So we want to now dive down into the rural electrification system. And you've mentioned a couple of models or approaches that Ghana has used, but then let's just zoom into rural electrification. We would appreciate some numbers for us to make the comparison. For instance, you mentioned the SHEP model that has really enhanced rural electrification in Ghana. Can we just look at the key elements in this model that makes it a beacon to be replicated in other regions? And then just walk us through the rural electrification journey with numbers and how the progress has been for us to better appreciate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ifwa. I'll say that in 1989, when we embarked on this journey, rural electrification access rate was just around 5%. 5%. So to move it from 5% to 71% is quite impressive. And currently, as things stand, we have achieved almost 98% access rate in all urban areas. So in urban areas, we will only be doing what we call intensification. When there are new communities, you intensify, or if the load is growing, you inject more transformers and so forth to be able to take care of the loads. So in the next 5 years, our effort is going to be on rural electrification. The last mile is for rural. Over 90% of financial support is going to be going into rural electrification to be able to reduce that 30% gap that we have left. And we'll be doing that with the SHEP initiative. We'll be doing that with the mini grid last mile electrification and also through the National Electrification Scheme strategy. With the SHEP, now the communities that are left are far away, more than 20 kilometers, as we have as a criteria to qualify for SHEP. So we have actually relooked at that, and we have packaged all these communities under what we call the revised SHEP initiative. And with that, we are now doing 10 key procurements. So you package a number of communities. If it's 100 or 200, you give it to a particular contractor under a 10 key arrangement, and they work on it and deliver it to the state. That is one approach that we are using to be able to increase the rural access rate from the current 71% to more than 90% if we have to achieve the target we've set for ourselves. Then for the mini grids, as I've indicated, it is capital intensive. We put in a lot of money to do that, and we cannot leave that solely in the hands of the communities. They cannot be able to absorb it. So what government does is that we take over the full capital costs, and then we only allow them to pay the tariff, the customers on mini grids to pay the tariff that anybody pays on a national grid. The difference or the delta is passed to the national tariff. And when you look at the numbers, per our latest studies, by 2030, Ghana should be having not less than 400 mini grids. If we have to increase rural electrification access rate, we have to be doing about 400 mini grids, you know. And if you look at the numbers, in terms of pass-through, it is just a drop in the cap. So even though it's a strategy that enables us to mobilize money to sustainably bridge the gap for the operations and management of mini grids, in terms of its impact on the overall tariff of the country, it's just a drop in the cap. So that is also another strategy that we think will really help the utilities to keep running the mini grids in a more cost-efficient manner. So the SHEP, I think, is a unique model that we must all pay a particular attention to, you know, because if you are not done the SHEP, what it means is that communities that were about 20 kilometers away from the national grid would have waited for much longer time before they got connected. But because of the SHEP, once you're able to show evidence that you have procured the low voltage poles, you've done the planting by yourselves, we just move ahead and do the electrification for you. And let me also state that because of the SHEP, a lot of communities then went into the cultivation of teak plantations, because the LV poles are usually produced from teak plantations. So a lot of communities around the country established their own teak plantations. They harvest these teaks, and then the processing companies come to take it, process it, they bring the poles to them and they plant. And that was really, really a game changer for most of these communities. It reduced the cost of having to buy these poles at a very high cost and things like that. So these are some of the critical ingredients that I think made the SHEP a big success and should be a model that should be replicated as well. Let me also state that the aspect that once the line is traversing through a particular community, we need to drop it and then connect them. It's also a model that I think the rest of Africa must be looking at. I recall some countries from Africa came to Ghana to benchmark with us. And when we asked the question, have you sent the lines to the community? They say, yeah, they've sent it. Why haven't you connected them? And they said, no, they were asking the people to pay $400, some $250 in connection fee before they do that. We said, no. You're not going to achieve any significant results. Connect them at no cost, and then pass through the cost of connection to the tariff. They'll pay anyway without realizing it. That is something that we did in Ghana, and it has really, really shored up access rate in the country.
Thank you for those really nice models. I'm sure we have a lot of participants from other countries that also lead in similar projects. So it's really good keys to learn from the models you've mentioned. We'll quickly move on to, we want to understand how this rural electrification project has increased socioeconomic benefit in the landscape of Ghana. How has it worked? Has it improved income? Has it improved education, healthcare benefit? How has it worked in tandem with these key social enterprises in the country?
The rural education program has really become a game changer, particularly for communities that are already connected to the grid or through mini grids. You know, electricity is an enabler. It's a catalyst that really accelerates the way things must happen. So communities that we've extended electricity to, we've seen massive transformation in their social and economic lives. Even they have been able to build better resilience in managing their environment than those that do not have access to electricity. I have my own popular, story that I share. There is one particular mini grid community that when we're doing the pilot, the World Bank went there, they did their own studies. The schools that the teachers were not staying on the island because they didn't have electricity to charge their phones, and so forth. So the performance of the school on that island was nothing to write home about. Then we went with this intervention. And after 2 years of operating these mini grids, the teachers have now began staying in the communities, and the contact hours between the students and the teachers have increased. And guess what? When they prepared their final year students to take the basic examination to go to high school, they came the second best in the entire district. That is how transformational energy or access to electricity can be for people in rural communities. And since then, the successes chalked by these communities have been so impressive. In terms of healthcare delivery, now they are able to stay in the communities and deliver health. Let me also state that because of the presence of electricity in the rural areas, there are a lot of social interventions that development partners bring on board. We see entities like the USAID building clinics in some of these mini grid communities, which they only have done before because there was no electricity. Now there's electricity. So they built first-class community health posts in these communities. Nurses are staying there. Health services are delivered to the people. Lives have improved. So I would say that rural electrification has really brought about transformational socioeconomic, changes within the landscape of this country. And same can be said in many countries as well. And for us, as I indicated, we are not only looking at electrification from the social point of view, we also look at the economics of it. So what we are doing is we are pushing a lot of industries into these rural areas. For example, Ghana has implemented a very big industrialization program where districts were encouraged to have industries in their districts to give job opportunities to their people, to be able to add value to their raw material before it comes to the cities and so forth. And we are even having much bigger programs now using electricity, particularly renewable energy, to drive irrigation in communities so that they can be able to cultivate larger land areas, and increase their production outputs, etc. So a lot is already happening in that space to see.
Sorry, thank you very much for that. We'll move. There are quite a number of questions in the comment section, but then I want your view on what we think about renewables for rural electrification. How is it working? How is it helping to address issues of stability and access limitation? And why should we go for renewables for rural electrification? What do you think about that?
In fact, I would say that renewable energy for rural electrification is the way to go. If you look at the cost of building new power plants, transmission lines, because mind you, you cannot transmit power over long distances using distribution networks. So to generate power from the generation sources, where in most part of the continent and in Ghana for that matter, generation is congested along the southern part of the country. To move electricity from the south to the north, you need big transmission infrastructure, and it comes at a very high cost. Now, to even cross rivers to go to these islands, it comes at an extremely high cost. But with renewable energy, you can build very small decentralized systems so that in a particular community, you have your own generation system, you have a small distribution network, and you're able to produce power and you distribute it within this small network to connect a very significant number of customers. With that, you are achieving so many things. One, you are reducing the cost of serving these people by avoiding the long lines of transmitting power to the people. Number two, you're also reducing your losses, because if you have to transmit power by these long distances, it comes at a very high line losses. But with mini grids, your losses are very minimal. On all my mini grid networks, the losses are under 3%. Number four, the cost of renewable energy solutions, solar panels, have dropped and dropped and dropped. It's so unbelievable, the price of solar panels today. Same goes for the batteries and even the other balance of plants. The costs keep dropping. So it's becoming even much cheaper now to build such networks using renewable energy solutions. So I think that it is cost effective today to electrify especially rural areas, in not only in Ghana, but across the entire African continent and the Asia Pacific regions using renewable energy solutions. Let me just give you some numbers. Before we did a pilot project, we looked at the cost of extending the national grid to these islands using submarine cables or high voltage overlines. And we realized that it was going to cost us about $11 million to connect each of these communities. But with the mini grids, we did it under $1 million to connect these communities. So you can imagine the amount of money we've saved and the risk of having to be checking the lines underwater to see that there are no leakages, etc. You minimize all of that. So renewables, for me, is the way to go for electrification, where the breach of the grid is expensive. Go with renewable energy solutions.
Yes, thank you very much, Engineer, for those. It's really warming to hear how viable renewables are for rural electrification, and I'm sure most of us are learning about that to really employ that, since we, as Africans, are really low on electrification assets. And there are some questions that has been asked. So I wanted to also ask about a public-private partnership, but someone asked it here, so let me read their question. Energy sector, and how does it work for Ghana?
Can you please go over the question again?
It says, does Ghana employ public-private partnerships models in the energy sector? And the person is asking how it works for Ghana. Yeah.
Okay, so the private sector has a role to play in the mini grid space in Ghana. We are not saying that they don't have any role to play. In the first place, the panels. Government doesn't manufacture panels, so it's coming from the private sector. Number two, the EPC arrangement, that's engineering, procurement, and construction. We give it to private sector. So they come in and then they do the construction of the mini grids for us. The only thing that they are not allowed to do is the ownership of the assets. The asset has to be owned and passed on to the utilities, because the utilities cannot take a private sector's asset and manage. They can only take a state-sponsored asset and then manage it. So that is the only difference. So private sector has a role to play, and then the public sector has a role to play. But the way it works is this. Government looks for money. So government could get concessional facility from multilateral financial institutions, from bilateral institutions, or through budgetary appropriation. And then we at the Ministry of Energy, we do the studies, we identify the communities, we look at the load flows, the demands, etc. And then we package these projects as EPC. We tender it through an open competitive tendering process, and companies from all over the world are invited, including Ghanaian companies, to tender. We go through the procurement process, evaluations are conducted, and the most responsive bidders are awarded contracts to construct the mini grids. The Ministry of Energy, my department for that matter, supervises the construction of these mini grids to ensure that they are being done in line with the plans, in line with the standards, in line with the codes, etc. When that is done, we commission the mini grids and then we hand them over to the state utilities to own, operate, and manage. So it doesn't mean that the state utilities are putting money into it. No. It's an asset we give to them. That is why they cannot recoup the capex. They can't recoup the capital expenditure because we have invested in the asset and we've given it to you. Just operate it and manage it. Ensure that you're able to service or serve the customers satisfactorily. And if the need for an expansion, come back to us and we'll expand a network for you. So that is how it operates. And it's a very simple model. And a lot of people are really showing interest in this model, I must say.
Thank you. Thank you, engineer, for that. And I'll take a next question from Sajej. I don't know whether I got that right, but there's a bit of confusion on the net metering. So he says that as far as he knows, net metering was tested in Ghana for independent production. So is this going to be introduced? If yes, when?
Okay, thank you very much. You've moved the conversation away from electrification to embedded generation, but I would want to speak to that as well. Yes, net metering, we piloted it in 2015 during the peak of Ghana's power crisis. And the reason why we wanted to do net metering at the time was to reduce the pressure on the national grid so that homes, businesses can have their own generation sources. If the grid goes off, they're able to run their businesses without any difficulties. But the program was, because it was an ad hoc intervention, it had a lot of challenges. Integration was an issue, financing was an issue, and so forth. Even at the time, renewable energy was not well advanced in Ghana. So having the capacity to be able to design these things and implement them was a bit of an issue. So the program was not able to move on as planned. Then we learned some lessons from that, and we have been able to define a new net metering program, which we are currently implementing as part of the Scaling Up Renewable Energy Program, SREP. With this, we have now been able to address all the issues. Number one, the issue about how the producers of energy through net metering would interact with the utilities. That's the prosumers' interaction with the utilities, the kind of contracts that will have to exist between them. All of this we need to address. What should be the tariff for energy generated from net metering? Should we do money or should we do energy? We've realized that if we want to do money, it's not going to be sustainable. So we have opted for the energy bit, so that instead of we allowing people to be exchanging money on the network, they now will exchange only energy. And the exchange arrangement has also been formalized. So if you produce electricity if you generate your own electricity and there's any surplus to be exported into the grid, you are allowed to do that. But if you want to take back that electricity, you can only take 40%. The utility will maintain 60% so that they can use it to keep maintaining the network to allow you to keep using it as a storage. So that is how it's been structured to run. And we think with this, it's going to be very sustainable going forward. We have also taken away the human interface from the application process. So you just go online, you visit the website, you input your own demand profile, and then the system will tell you how much generation you can do. So for example, if I do it for the Ministry of Energy's building, the result is that I can do 110 kilowatts installation of solar PV. So it means I am sizing based on my consumption. It is not for money making, but it's just to help me reduce my dependence on the national grid. The only time I'll be pushing any surplus energy into the grid is probably when on weekends we are not in the office and we are producing a lot of energy. We push it into the grid. When we come back on the weekdays, we are allowed to take 40% of that. So that is the kind of model we have currently developed for our net metering. And I might say that there's so much interest externally and everybody is watching us. If it becomes successful, it will serve as a template for scaling up net metering across the continent based on energy exchange, not monetary exchange.
That's really nice. Yeah, nice learning about it. Great question. We'll take two more questions, then we could move it back to Carlos for the wrap up. One question is on the productive use. Jen says, I didn't catch the experience of Ghana about productive use of solar energy. This may help me as we are initiating a productive use of energy pilot project. So Jen Cloud is from Burundi, and he's asking insight about how Ghana is working on productive use of energy for rural electrification. And so also implementing is also his setting as well. And back to you, Engineer.
Thank you very much for that question. I must say that productive uses of energy is an integral part of our planning process. It starts right from inception. When we are doing the feasibility studies for electrification of a particular community, one of the attributes that we cover is the productive uses of energy, and that dovetails into the economic aspect of the intervention. So we look at existing businesses, we look at the economic potentials of the communities, and then we do projections and come up with demand that will be able to meet the current and future demand for a period of 10 years. That is what we do with our electrification. So if you're injecting transformers, we size them such that even if there are productive uses of energy coming in, we should be able to meet the load for the next 10 years before we think of, injecting more transformers. But now, how do we do that? It has to be deliberate. We do not work alone. We do not work in silos. We work with other sectors of the economy. As I indicated, electricity is only a catalyst. It's only an enabler. So we need to bring on board the likes of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We need to bring on board the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We need to bring on board the social ministries like Education, Health, and we let them know that this is what we are going to be doing. What are your plans for these communities? So we look at their plans, and then we can tell that, well, for this particular community, the economic potential there is agricultural processing. So Ministry of Agriculture would want to do more on processing if there's electricity. So we factor that into the process. So it's a kind of an ecosystem approach to development. We do not just go and put the lines there. We carry along the key sectors. Mind you, it is not my responsibility to go and build hospitals, neither is it my responsibility to go and build industries. Mine is to send electricity, but I am only profitable if the industries come in, if the hospitals come in, if the schools come in, if the markets are established. So I carry all these sectors along and we work together to be able to do that. With this kind of experience, we have now moved into the new era of the energy economic nexus. In fact, we've also added a social and environmental side to it. So it's energy, social, environment, economic nexus, which is now allowing us to build models. If it's for irrigation, we are focusing more on irrigation in a particular community. If it is for processing, we are focusing on processing. Those are the kind of things we are doing to ensure that there is big productive use of energy into the network. There are some school of thought that we should also bring communication. In the case of Ghana, cellular network coverage has gone very, very wide and extensive across the country. We have a number of cellular network service providers like the MTNs, the Airtel, the Vodafones, they are all there. Because there is now electricity in the rural communities, they also go there to build their repeater cell stations to boost their networks, particularly data coverage across the country. And they also become customers on a network that pay us good money for using electricity to run their repeater stations. So these are some of the things we are looking at. The next generation of mini grids we are going to be building in Ghana from next year going, we also want to include water treatment so that islands and communities can have water pumped from the lake, treated, and then distributed through community water distribution networks, and they will pay for that service to further boost, the economics of mini-grid integration or interventions in these communities.
Thank you, Engineer Said. It's been really warming listening to you throughout this 1 hour. There's one question that maybe I'll ask that, then we can wrap up since I think we have stressed with time on rural electrification and communities. And the person is saying that I think it's Isaac Azuma. He says, great presentation from you. And rural communities in the northern part of Ghana still experience unstable electricity access or no access at all. Are there any mini grids in communities in the northern part of Ghana? And have hybrid mini grid systems been considered? I think Ripa is here, but I'll leave it to you, Engineer Said, to answer the question.
Thank you very much for that question. If you're listening to me carefully, I said if you have to extend the lines over long distances, the quality of the lines normally hang in the balance. And that is what you are experiencing in the northern part of the country. The lines are too long. You have a line traveling over 200 kilometers only to go and pick a load that is around 100 or 200 kVA. And this is not economical at all. So when it comes to quality of service, the utilities sometimes will have to weigh the economics of it, going to inject more transformers to pick such small loads. So what we are doing now as part of the strategy and efforts to address the poor quality of electrification in the northern part of the country is to promote mini grids within these areas. And I'm happy Ifwa mentioned the repower, which is one of the pilot interventions we want to do in these regions to see how mini grids can really help to, boost network through decentralized interventions in the northern region and make them grid ready. So when the grid arrives, you can actually interconnect them and use it to boost the voltages at the end of the lines. So these are some of the things that we are looking at. But in addition to that, we are also now pushing a lot of generation into the northern part of the country. Hitherto, generation has been focused in the southern part of the country, and that is making huge losses at the end of the lines, especially in the northern part of the country. And what we are doing now is to push generation to the middle part and also to the northern part. So you see a lot of renewable energy installations now taking place in the northern part of the country. We have the Bui project, which is almost going to be giving us about 600 to 700 megawatts of power when it is fully functional. Currently, we have 400 megawatts coming from hydro and about 100 megawatts coming from solar in that enclave. We have other power projects in the northern region, which will be boosting the voltages in that region to ensure that your poor power quality issues are resolved for a very long time to come.
Yes, thank you. I don't know, Carlos, if you can take additional questions or we are already done with time, but there are quite a number of questions that are coming in. I'm not sure we can take all, but Carlos, let us know.
Yeah. Thank you, Efa. So I think we had better wrap up, because we are quite over time. But
Okay.
Seth, if you're happy we can essentially send you the questions and maybe you can answer some of them later on if you get the chance. But yeah, I'd like to really thank you. This has been a really interesting and fruitful exchange, I find. It's been great. And before we leave, I'd like to let everyone know that we have a newsletter. So I've left the link there, and you can essentially, learn more about rural electrification in Ghana and in other countries that the Repower project is working in. So I encourage you to sign up. Seth, I don't know if you'd like to say anything to you know, in the way of parting words for the audience.
Yeah, I would want to say a
Please,
big thank you.
yeah, sorry,
I want to
I
say a
just
big
wanted you
thank
to.
you. Okay, sorry.
No, I just wanted you to add briefly the challenges you are facing and your outlook into 2030. So maybe in your wrapping up, please add that for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for making time to participate in this webinar. It's unfortunate that time has not been too kind to us and we have to be drawing that a curtain, but I hope we'll have another opportunity to continue with this dialogue. As Carlos has indicated, I'll try to respond to your questions if they are made available to me. I want to say that in conclusion, every country needs to have a strategic plan. The plans must be long-term in nature. An uncle of mine used to tell me that you don't plan for 1 year, you plan for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. If you do that and you follow to the plan methodically, you should be in the position of achieving significant electrification rate in your region. Ghana started with a 30-year plan and we've seen the results. It's so remarkable. And I think this is something that we must all take on board. Secondly, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Look at the dynamics of your region, the dynamics of your country, and opt for a solution that you think would help advance your cause for electrification. I must say that the challenges we've passed through in Ghana over the past 30 years in our electrification journey have been enormous, but it's also been an opportunity for us to keep, evolving and improving the process from time to time, and that is what has gotten us here. Financing, we all know, is a major challenge, and I must say that government of Ghana has identified this as one of the issues that could delay or derail the progress. And for that matter, we have had massive central government budgetary support for electrification in Ghana. Government puts in a lot of money to do this, and this has been seen as a very good example for donors to complement government efforts, by also putting their money, because if you have the skin of the country in the game, it makes a lot of sense for you to also have your skin in the game. And that is one thing that I think we need to look at. So if you're having financing as a challenge, make sure that the little resources you have, put in something, use it to unlock additional resources from elsewhere to do it. The outlook going forward is that in the next 5 years, we are not going to be leaving any stone unturned. We're going to be working very hard and smart to ensure that we connect the rest of the population to electricity. And this last mile, we want to do all kinds of crazy stuff on it, the ecosystem approach, the various nexus. We want to encourage all of that, bring them on board to see how the last mile can really trigger the bottom-up economic transformation in these communities that we have left to connect. So I want to thank you very much for your time. It's really been a pleasure chatting with all of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Seth, and thank you, Effa. I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Effa.
Yeah, it's just been a very beautiful time and I've learned a lot. I hope everyone here has also learned a lot. And we've seen that we want to change the dynamics for Africa. We don't want to still have the narration that over 600 million people are lacking access to electrification in Africa. So all those things and the models that has been shared here are going a long way to shape this dynamics and change it for all of us, for our future and for our economic transformation. So it's been a nice time with you all, and I appreciate being the moderator for today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. See you next time. Thanks.